The penthouse door slammed shut, echoing like a gunshot through the marble foyer. Ethan Caldwell, tech mogul and single father, barely flinched, was used to nannies fleeing by noon. But today, as his triplets' laughter turned to shrieks, he felt the weight of his world cracking. Ethan stood at the edge of the living room, his tailored suit rumpled from a morning of chaos. At 35, he was a man who commanded boardrooms and reshaped industries. But his 3 5-year-olds Leo, Max, and Sophie were an empire he couldn't conquer. Their latest nanny, a stern woman with a clipboard, had lasted 4 hours before storming out, muttering about feral children. Ethan's dark eyes scanned the room, toys strewn like shrapnel, juice stains on the white rug, and Sophie smearing finger paint on the glass coffee table. He loved them fiercely, but love wasn't enough to tame the storm. The doorbell chimed, soft but insistent. Ethan sighed, expecting another agency temp who'd be gone by dinner. He opened the door to find Caleb Harper, 30, standing there with a tray of cookies and a smile that felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. "Mr. Caldwell, I'm your new nanny," Caleb said, his voice warm, steady, like he'd already decided this job was his. His hazel eyes sparkled with something Ethan couldn't place hope, maybe, or defiance. Caleb stepped inside, unfazed by the chaos. Leo was climbing the bookshelf. Max was hurling a stuffed dinosaur, and Sophie was singing off-key at the top of her lungs. Most nannies would have frozen or lectured. Caleb didn't. He knelt to the triplets level, holding out the tray. "Cookies. Anyone. Chocolate chip. Fresh from the oven." The room stilled. 3 pairs of wide eyes locked onto him. Sophie, always the boldest, snatched a cookie and grinned. "You're not like the others," she declared. Ethan watched, stunned. No nanny had lasted a day, yet here was this man openly gay, with no formal childcare training, just a culinary degree and a tray of cookies calming his kids in seconds. Caleb glanced up, catching Ethan's gaze. "I've got this," he said, and for the first time in years, Ethan believed it. Caleb wasn't what Ethan had expected when he'd called the agency. He'd pictured another stiff professional, not this guy in a soft flannel shirt, with flour dusted on his jeans and a quiet confidence that filled the room. Ethan had grown up in a world of rigid expectations. His father's voice still echoed, preaching traditional values and success at all costs. A gay nanny. His boardroom buddies would raise eyebrows. But as Caleb led the triplets to the kitchen, teaching them to wash their hands before eating, Ethan felt something shift. Maybe this was what his kids needed: someone real, someone who didn't flinch at their wildness. The first day wasn't perfect. Leo tested Caleb by dumping a bowl of cereal on the floor. Max hid under the dining table, refusing to come out. Sophie demanded a princess crown made of glitter, then cried when it wasn't sparkly enough. Caleb handled it all with a mix of patience and sly humor, turning cleanup into a game and coaxing Max out with a story about a dinosaur who loved hide and seek. By evening, the triplets were giggling, helping Caleb roll dough for tomorrow's cookies. Ethan, watching from the doorway, felt a pang he couldn't name. Relief. Gratitude. Or something deeper, stirring in a corner of his heart he'd long ignored. That night, after the kids were asleep, Ethan found Caleb in the kitchen, wiping down counters. "You survived," Ethan said, leaning against the doorway. Caleb laughed, a sound that felt like it could light up the whole penthouse. "Barely. They're a handful, but they're good kids. They just need someone to meet them where they are." Ethan nodded, his throat tight. He wasn't used to this: someone seeing his kids, really seeing them, beyond the chaos. "Why do this?" Ethan asked. "You could be a chef anywhere." Caleb paused, his eyes distant. I grew up in a small town, where being myself wasn't easy. I learned to find joy in small things, like baking for people I care about. Your kids, they deserve that joy. Ethan felt the words land like stones in still water, rippling through him. He didn't know what to say, so he just nodded, retreating to his study. But Caleb's presence lingered, warm and unsettling, like a melody he couldn't shake. The next morning, Ethan woke to the smell of pancakes and the sound of laughter. He found Caleb flipping pancakes in the shape of dinosaurs, the triplets cheering him on. For the first time in months, Ethan didn't feel like he was drowning. But as he watched Caleb high-five Max, he wondered, could someone like Caleb, so open and unapologetic, fit into his tightly controlled world? And why did the thought of Caleb leaving already feel like a loss? Caleb's second day began with a crash. A vase, one of Ethan's late wife's favorites, lay in shards on the hardwood floor. Leo stood frozen, his face pale, expecting a scolding. Ethan, stepping out of his home office, braced for the usual meltdown. But Caleb knelt beside Leo, his voice gentle. Accidents happen, buddy. Let's clean it up together. Ethan watched, his chest tight, as Caleb turned a disaster into a lesson, guiding Leo's small hands to sweep the pieces. By midweek, Caleb had transformed the penthouse. The triplets still had their wild moments. Max smeared peanut butter on the couch. Sophie insisted on wearing mismatched shoes, but Caleb navigated their chaos with a quiet magic. He introduced adventure hours, where the kids built forts from blankets and imagined they were explorers. Ethan, overhearing their laughter from his Zoom calls, felt a pang of envy. He'd built a billion-dollar empire, but he couldn't make his kids light up like that. Caleb's presence wasn't just changing the kids. Ethan found himself lingering in the kitchen, watching Caleb chop vegetables or braid Sophie's hair. There was something about Caleb's ease, his unapologetic warmth, his quick laugh that made Ethan's polished world feel sterile. One evening, as Caleb taught the triplets to make pizza, Ethan joined them, awkwardly kneading dough. "You're not bad at this," Caleb teased, brushing flour off Ethan's sleeve. Their eyes met, and Ethan's heart stuttered. He pulled back, retreating to his study. But the moment burned in his mind. Caleb's story came out in fragments. Over coffee one morning, he mentioned growing up in rural Ohio, where being gay meant hiding. "I left at 18, he said, stirring his mug. Moved to New York, worked in kitchens, found people who didn't care who I loved." Ethan listened, torn between curiosity and discomfort. His own upbringing in a wealthy, conservative family had taught him to keep emotions at arm's length. Caleb's openness was foreign, magnetic, dangerous. The triplets adored Caleb. Sophie started calling him Cookie Man. Max drew him pictures of dinosaurs. And Leo, usually the quietest, began talking more. But not everyone was thrilled. Ethan's mother, Eleanor, visited one afternoon, her designer heels clicking judgmentally. "A male nanny," she said, eyeing Caleb. "And unmarried." Her tone dripped with implications. Ethan bristled but said nothing. Later, Caleb shrugged it off. "I've heard worse," he said, but Ethan saw the flicker of hurt in his eyes. By the end of the week, the agency called. "We have a more experienced nanny available," they said. Ethan hesitated. Caleb wasn't perfect yesterday. Max had snuck into Ethan's office and drawn on important documents, but he was good for the kids. And maybe, Ethan admitted to himself, good for him too. He told the agency to hold off, his gaze drifting to Caleb, who was teaching Sophie to tie her shoes. For the first time, Ethan wondered what it would be like to let someone in, not just as a nanny, but as something more. The first real test came on day 10. Sophie woke with a fever. Her usual spark dimmed. Ethan canceled meetings, pacing the penthouse, while Caleb stayed calm, pressing a cool cloth to Sophie's forehead and singing softly. By evening, she was curled in Caleb's lap, asleep. Ethan watched from the doorway, his heart twisting. His late wife, Anna, used to sing to the kids like that. The memory stung, but Caleb's presence softened it. Caleb's routines were taking root. Mornings started with oatmeal and stories. Afternoons with crafts or park trips. The triplets' tantrums lessened, their trust in Caleb growing. Ethan noticed it too, how Caleb's laugh filled the silence, how his cookies became a daily ritual. But doubts crept in. Ethan's world was one of contracts and control. Caleb was unpredictable, a wild card who didn't fit the mold. One night, after the kids were in bed, Ethan found Caleb sketching in the living room. "You're an artist too?" Ethan asked, surprised. Caleb showed him a drawing of the triplets laughing. "Just a hobby," he said, but the detail in the sketch told a different story. Ethan sat beside him, closer than he meant to. "You're good with them," he said. "Better than I am." Caleb shook his head. "You're their dad. They just need you to show up." The words hit hard, exposing a truth Ethan had avoided. The next day, Ethan's best friend, Mark, dropped by. A Wall Street type, Mark raised an eyebrow at Caleb. "Your nanny's interesting," he said later, sipping whiskey. "Not exactly traditional." Ethan's jaw tightened. "He's good for the kids." Mark shrugged. "Just saying. People talk." Ethan brushed it off, but the comment lingered, stirring old fears about appearances. Caleb, oblivious to the scrutiny, kept shining. He organized a superhero day, dressing the triplets in capes and leading them on a mission to save the living room. Ethan joined in, reluctantly donning a makeshift cape. For an hour, he wasn't a billionaire or a widower, just a dad, laughing with his kids. Caleb's grin, bright and unguarded, made Ethan's chest ache. He wasn't ready to name the feeling, but it was there, growing. By the end of the third week, the penthouse felt different, warmer, alive. But tension simmered. Ethan's mother called, insisting he hire a proper nanny. The agency sent another resume, and Ethan caught himself watching Caleb too closely, wondering if he was risking more than he could afford to lose. A storm hit New York, rain lashing the penthouse windows. Inside, Caleb and the triplets built a pillow fort, their laughter drowning out the thunder. Ethan, stuck on a call with investors, envied their joy. When the call ended, he joined them, crawling into the fort. Caleb handed him a flashlight, their fingers brushing. "Welcome to Fort Awesome," Caleb said, his smile soft. Ethan's heart raced, and he looked away, unsettled. Caleb's effect on the kids was undeniable. Leo, once shy, now told stories about dragons. Max's tantrums were fewer, replaced by questions about baking. Sophie clung to Caleb, calling him her best friend. But Ethan's mother wasn't swayed. She cornered him at a family dinner, her voice low. "This Calebi's not one of us. What will people think?" Ethan's temper flared. "He's good for my kids. That's what matters." But her words gnawed at him, echoing his own buried fears. One evening, Caleb shared more of his past. "My family didn't get me," he said, washing dishes. "They wanted me to be someone else. I came here to be free." Ethan listened, his walls crumbling. He wanted to ask more, to understand Caleb's strength, but fear held him back. Instead, he said, "You're good for them." Caleb's eyes met his, searching. "Just them?" he asked, half teasing. Ethan froze, unable to answer. The next day, disaster struck. Max, chasing Leo, tripped and cut his knee. Blood stained the rug, and Max's wails filled the penthouse. Caleb scooped him up, cleaning the wound with steady hands. Ethan, arriving home, saw the scene and panicked. What happened? He demanded. Caleb explained calmly, but Ethan's fear turned to anger. You should have been watching him. Caleb's face fell, but he nodded. You're right. I'll do better. Ethan regretted his words instantly, but pride kept him silent. That night, Caleb stayed late, reading to Max. Ethan watched from the hallway, guilt heavy in his chest. He wanted to apologize, to say Caleb was more than a nanny, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, he retreated, the distance between them growing. The tension lingered. Ethan avoided Caleb, burying himself in work, but the kids noticed. Why's Daddy mad? Sophie asked Caleb one morning. Caleb deflected with a smile, but his eyes were heavy. He kept up the routines, baking, stories, park trips, but Ethan's outburst had left a mark. Caleb tried to bridge the gap. He left a plate of cookies on Ethan's desk with a note for the grumpy boss. See? Ethan stared at the note, torn between amusement and shame. He ate a cookie, the sweetness reminding him of Caleb's warmth. He wanted to fix things, but didn't know how. A week later, the Triplets school hosted a family day. Ethan, swamped with work, almost skipped it, but Caleb insisted. They need you there, he said, his tone firm but kind. Ethan went, watching Caleb cheer as the kids ran races. When Sophie won a ribbon, she ran to Caleb first, then Ethan. The moment felt like a gift, fragile and precious. That night, Ethan found Caleb in the kitchen. I'm sorry, he said, the words rough. For snapping at you. You didn't deserve it. Caleb nodded, his expression soft. I get it. You're protecting them. They stood in silence, the air charged. Ethan wanted to say more, to confess the feelings he couldn't name, but fear stopped him. Caleb's past surfaced again during a quiet moment. I had a partner once, he said, folding laundry. Didn't work out. He couldn't handle my chaos. He laughed, but it was hollow. Ethan wanted to ask more, to know Caleb's heart, but he only said, You deserve better. Caleb's smile was sad, grateful. The agency called again, offering another nanny. Ethan's mother pushed harder, warning about optics. Ethan hung up on both, his choice clear. But as he watched Caleb tuck the kids into bed, singing softly, he wondered if he was ready to face what Caleb was stirring in him, longing he'd never dared to name. The triplets' birthday was approaching, a milestone Ethan dreaded. Anna had died a week after their first birthday, and every year since felt like a wound reopening. Caleb sensed it, planning a small party with dinosaur cakes and balloons. You okay with this? He asked Ethan, showing him sketches of the cake. Ethan nodded, grateful but distant. The party was a success. Caleb led games, baked cookies, and kept the kids laughing. Ethan watched, marveling at Caleb's ease. But when Sophie asked, Why's Daddy sad? Caleb glanced at Ethan, his eyes full of understanding. Later, as the kids slept, Caleb found Ethan on the balcony. You miss her, he said softly. Ethan nodded, his throat tight. Every day? Caleb didn't push, just stood beside him, their shoulders close. The next day, Ethan's mother arrived, unannounced. This has gone on long enough, she said, eyeing Caleb. You need a proper nanny. Not this. Ethan's patience snapped. He's family to them, he said, the words surprising him. Caleb, overhearing, froze, his eyes wide. Eleanor left, fuming, but Ethan felt lighter, like he'd claimed something true. That night, Caleb and Ethan talked late, sharing whiskey. Why do you stay? Ethan asked. Caleb shrugged. The kids. And, you're not so bad. His teasing smile made Ethan's heart race. He leaned closer, their knees touching. Caleb, he started, but his phone rang, shattering the moment. Work. Always work. The next morning, Caleb seemed distant. His usual warmth dimmed. Ethan hated it, but didn't know how to fix it. He caught Caleb's hand as he passed. A fleeting touch. Stay? Ethan said, meaning more than the job. Caleb's eyes searched his, uncertain but hopeful. The moment hung between them, fragile and unspoken. Ethan pulled back, fear winning out. Caleb stayed, but a quiet distance grew. He was still the perfect nanny baking, playing, teaching, but his smiles didn't reach his eyes. Ethan hated himself for it. A crisis hit when Leo ran away during a park trip. Caleb found him hiding in a playground tunnel, scared but safe. Ethan, arriving in a panic, hugged Leo tightly. Thank you, he told Caleb, their eyes locking. Caleb nodded, but the hurt lingered. That night, Ethan found Caleb packing. I got an offer, Caleb said. A chef job in Paris. Ethan's heart sank. You're leaving? Caleb looked at him, vulnerable. Do you want me to stay? The question was a challenge, one Ethan wasn't ready for. He said nothing, and Caleb's face fell. The next day, Ethan took the kids to the zoo, giving Caleb space. Sophie asked, Is Cookie Man leaving? Ethan's chest ached. He didn't want Caleb to go, but admitting why felt like stepping off a cliff. At home, he found Caleb's sketchbook, filled with drawings of the kids and one of Ethan, laughing. The sight broke something in him. That evening, Ethan confronted his fears. He found Caleb in the kitchen, rolling dough. Don't go, he said, his voice raw. I need you. We need you. Caleb's eyes softened, but he didn't speak. Ethan stepped closer, heart pounding. I'm scared, he admitted. But I want Thysis. Caleb's smile returned, tentative but real. Caleb stayed. The penthouse felt whole again. The triplets' laughter louder. Ethan's heart lighter. He and Caleb moved slowly, testing this new thing between them. A late-night talk turned into a kiss, hesitant but electric, under the kitchen's soft lights. The kids noticed the change, Sophie giggling when she caught them holding hands. Ethan's mother disapproved, but he didn't care. He introduced Caleb at a company gala, not as the nanny but as his partner. Whispers followed, but Ethan stood taller, Caleb's hand in his. The triplets, oblivious to the gossip, cheered for Cookie Man. Months later, Caleb moved into the penthouse, not as staff, but as family. The triplets thrived, their chaos tempered by love. Ethan, once afraid of his own heart, learned to let go, to live for more than his empire. Caleb's cookies became a symbol of their new life, messy, sweet, and shared. One evening, as snow fell over New York, Ethan watched Caleb and the kids build a gingerbread house. He joined them, his laughter mingling with theirs. The past grief, fear, judgment faded against the warmth of this moment. They weren't perfect, but they were together, and that was enough.